Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Devin, Hasson, Bryan Murphy, and Chris Jackson. Gentlemen, it is Monday, and we are here to talk about some high school basketball playoffs. Boy, what an eventful first week it was for the on the boys' side. I was looking over the brackets over the weekend just to see again, like what remains there were from what those first two rounds did to our markets. Has anybody here watched the HBO TV series The Leftovers?
Yes.
Okay.
Love that show.
So you're familiar with the premise where just out of the blue, 2% of the world's population disappears. That formula was reversed, and I feel like 98% of the basketball teams that we cover got bounced within the first two rounds of the playoffs. Because we are left now, I believe, heading into the third round. We have Mesquite Horn, Newman Smith, you just saw them. Mm-hmm. They were headed to the third round for, I believe, just the third time in their history. We got Salina, so Bryan double dipping over here.
Just all the traditional basketball powerhouses, am I right?
And we have Argyle, so we have four teams remaining in our coverage area through the first two rounds of the playoffs. So, yes, let's talking about several teams that have had their runs come to an end and whatnot. So, let's talk, Chris. Let's talk about District 6A. Which had a 3-1 start in the first round, so a really, really promising, start to the playoffs. But then, as we kind of talked about in the playoff preview, that once you get past that first round and start going up against the 7-6A teams, the 8-6A teams, that it's going to be a little bit tougher. And you got to see one of them, the best team from 6-6A, Capel, as they went headstrong into a pretty stout Waxahachie team.
Honestly, I've got two words for you: Region 1.
Yeah.
I think that's all you really have to say, because I think I mentioned it in this preview show last week when I talked to Adam Musa just a week and a half ago. Was about if you can get past like a Waxahachie second round, maybe you can make a run. Sure, you'd have to play another top 25 team, but that's a big win. Maybe they could see a confidence boost, but you have to play the number 11 team in the state. Round 2, the first week of the postseason, when most regions you're probably not seeing that good of a team until 4th, 5th round, honestly. But it's just you're getting a lot of state-ranked matchups right now. You saw that the winner of that would have played the number 6 team or the number 18 team, but Capel had them too, honestly. They tied that game at 23-23, end of the first half. Waxahachie goes on a 92 run. Capel can never quite recover from it. Waxahachie eventually goes up 15. Capel makes a late run, but it was just that run at the end of the first half that kind of tipped the scales of that game and ended Capel's season.
Capel, though, still in a pretty good spot, though, going forward, despite losing a couple impactful seniors.
They lose Brandon Taylor, really tough kid, honestly. I'd want about 15 of those kids on my team. The way he played Friday night was really tough. Adam Lucy, you lose him. You lose some of those all-district kids that were first team, but their future is bright. Obviously, you get Ryan Argyle back. Yeah. Smoothest shot I've seen from a sophomore out there. He's definitely going to get some offers real soon.
That's a D1 prospect, for sure.
Anthony Black, obviously, a heck of an athlete, another all-district kid this year as well. I'm getting one dunk. I think everybody at the media table about fell off their chairs.
Okay.
Slammed on a dude, and I think it was pretty obvious why he's got offers in multiple sports. But you've got those two back. They've got another sophomore actually coming up, Devon, who's a really, really good player. He just didn't get that time this year, but Clint Snow, the head coach, is really excited about him too. So, sure, you lose a big senior class. This happened to them last year. They lost a big, really talented senior class last year. What happened? They ended up winning the district, going to the second round before you lose to Waxahachie. But next year, they're going to have a new crop of kids coming through. They have a couple freshmen they're excited about. They brought up to the playoff roster this year, too. So Capel's got a good future for this program, especially when your first 2 years into this head coach, you win 2 straight outright titles in that district. And you've got a couple of some of the best sophomores in the state coming up. You're going to be up there for a while.
It was a pretty strong start to the postseason for all of 6-6A. You had even the only team that lost in the first round was Marcus, and they actually lost to Geyer by 5. They actually did quite well. They were able to make a late charge there and really kind of make Geyer sweat out those last couple minutes. They only allowed 12 points to big man Jacoby Coles, one of the top players in the entire state. So Marcus, even in defeat, showed pretty well. I got to see Flower Mound in their bi-district game Tuesday against Keller. They made 17 threes in that game. That is, Flower Mound is as good an outside shooting team as anyone that I've seen at the high school level. It's and they've got the perfect floor general and Jeffrey Mills to run the show. And it's just anytime they would get on a fast break, you'd have Mills bringing the ball up, and then you have in one corner it's Jack Richter, the other corner you have Gavin Green, and either option is going to be absolute death for the opposing defense. They're just such a lights out shooting team. I really like the playmaking from Robert Sierri, their 6'7" forward, who's also a really capable 3-point shooter. He did a good job. Keller threw a zone defense at a team that is, one of the premier three-point shooting teams in the area. I mean, it felt like kind of from the get-go you're asking for disaster. And, I mean, yeah, I think it was, 5 threes that Flymont hit in the first quarter. Sierra did a good job, kind of like, they throw a skip pass to Sierra, and then he kind of fakes a pass one way, gets the entire defense to kind of bend, and then he just cans a three of his own. It was some really, really smooth playmaking on his part. It was very, very convincing. That's and it's just kind of the way that program is operated. Head coach Eric Littleton afterwards said that, you look over the years, it's never going to be a program that just like that, overwhelms you with the eye test and whatnot. So what his program has always kind of been founded on is that they rely on high IQ players who can shoot. Like they want to maximize those two traits of a basketball player. And you've seen what they've been able to do over the years, how consistent they've been. And this year's team was quality. Even in the second round, they lost to number 9 ranked Grand Prairie. A Grand Prairie team that only has, I believe, just 2 losses all season. This was a game that went right down to the wire. They gave Grand Prairie a really spirited fight. So some good stuff for the Jaguars. Now, they do graduate a big senior class, so I'm curious to see how they reload, but their track record says this should still be pretty solid and whatnot. Louisville, showed out well in their first-round matchup. They were able to get past Byron Nelson. The Keontae George show just continued on rolling, but the totality of Duncanville, number 1 ranked Duncanville, is just a little bit too much in the second round. They lost that one by 13 points. Tough night on the glass for the Farmers in that loss, but I believe Keontae finishes out the year with 30-plus points in his last 4 games. He was, if you're one for recruiting sites, he was bumped up to number 12 in the nation. For I guess by 247sports.com, the number 1 ranked sophomore in Texas, and I picked up a Kansas offer. So yes, things continuing to come up Keontae.
So our old Justin Thomas, he covered that game.
He
right?
did.
So
Justin Thomas loves watching that Louisville team.
He's been talking about Keontae George since before he even played.
I mean, he was kind of like it sounds like R.J. Hampton, where like the second you saw this kid as a freshman, you knew that okay, this kid's going to be special.
Me and Justin were texting, I believe it was Saturday afternoon, and we were talking about Keontae and the playoffs and what he thought of Keontae and Duncanville and whatnot. He was already saying Keontae is better than R.J. Hampton. I don't think he saw R.J. play.
With you, that's fighting words.
I almost told him, drop a pin, Justin. Send me your location. I'll be there in 20 minutes.
I don't even bring up Tyrese Maxey around Hughes.
Tier below R.J.
On the whole, it was a quality start to the postseason for 6-6-8, but it was just again, Region 1 is about as low as it's ever been, and it was just bound to catch up with you eventually. But then you look at 9-6-8 versus 10-6-8. We can talk about one of the regardless of the round, one of the bigger upsets, I'd hedge to say, over the course of the playoffs. Sexy,
yes,
over Prosper. What happened?
I don't know.
I believe you said last week, you said it would be a shocker. A shocker. I wish I could have watched it. A shocker if Prosper lost to Saxe.
Would you classify it as a shocker, though?
I said it wouldn't be a shocker. It was certainly an upset. I'm not taking that away.
At least I didn't say it wasn't going to happen. Because then I'd really Brian. Delete that pod from last week. I'm going to cancel it. It never happened.
Going to change my name.
Granted, it was 77-76. And it went to overtime?
Yeah, it was a 1-point game. Yeah. But Saxe did what they needed to in terms of they stayed close at the beginning. They didn't let Prosper ever get away from it. In fact, Saxe led for most of this game. And that's exactly what they needed to do. This is a Saxe team that had never won a playoff game in their history before going against a state-ranked opponent. And so, talking with Coach Mike, they knew that coming out and getting off to a strong start was important, in terms of the game flow, but also in terms of confidence. And they were able to do that. They were able to hold on to the lead for much of the game. And then, obviously, it's a 1-point game, so it comes down to clutch moments. And Saxe, despite their, lack of history, so to speak, in the playoffs, was able to pull it out. It was a huge win for that program.
And that was a cool little celebration. That was it on Twitter.
Yeah.
With Mike still just getting drenched in water bottles in the locker room. Their first ever playoff win. That's pretty cool. Full disclosure, I don't have a dog in the fight, even though I went to Saxe, graduated from Saxe, 10 years ago already, and I covered Prosper. So I like seeing Prosper play. I like seeing them, succeed. But it was cool seeing Saxe.
Soft spot for the alma mater.
Yeah, and especially first ever play. I used to be part of that basketball program for a few years. It's cool to see how where they've gotten now.
Yeah, keep in mind this team was 2-24 2 years ago. I mean that they were bottom of the barrel, not just in that district, but in this area.
And that's so strange.
And they turned things around.
They dominate every other sport. And then boys basketball always struggled, for the last, their first, 12, 15 years of existence. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool to see them, finally getting that success.
Yeah.
If Saxy over Prosper was not your your biggest upset of the postseason so far, maybe it was Waco Midway over Allen, which
the second year in a row, right?
The second round got Allen again. You knew going in that Allen was going to have to slow down one of the more high volume duos, high volume scoring duos in the state in Midway's God's Gift as Edema and Anthony Scott, and those two combined for 46 points. They didn't have a player that got over 4 points elsewhere on the team.
His first name is God's Gift.
God's Gift. Ezedema. There's no chance I just pronounced that last name correctly, but that's my best shot at it.
That's up there with some of the cooler names we've seen.
It was. Those two did their thing as they have kind of all season, it sounds like. Allen got some solid balance from Manny Obaseki, Tyland Elder, and Bryce Kennedy, but, those three combined for just 40 points, which is a little bit below par for what those three are capable of. You can typically, especially in a game like this, you'd expect those two in the play, especially with playoff minutes, maybe get up in the kind of the 50 to 60 range with their combined output. But Allen, they started off really, really strong, so a team that's had some hiccups in the first quarter throughout the season. They were out to a 15-8 lead, and then the second quarter is actually the one that got them. They only scored 6 points, and all of a sudden now this was a game at half, and then the defense slipped a bit there in the fourth quarter. Midway scored 22 points over the last 8 minutes, and it's a little surprising. This is the second straight year though that Allen has lost in the area around, despite coming off some of the better regular season work in their history. As you mentioned, this is their first outright district championship since 1992. If you look at these last two seasons since winning a state championship, Allen's lost a combined 7 regular season games, and they did not advance past the second round either year. It's pretty stunning. So maybe that's just the penance for winning state, I guess. But nevertheless, though, yes, Allen, just for the second straight year, already out, despite a top 5 ranking and all that, one of the better teams in the entire state, and they will the third round will start this week without them. Devin, you got to see a pretty fun game on Friday, it sounds like. What do you make of, I guess, one of the few teams that we have remaining, Horn, onto the third round after a pretty wild game with a young upstart McKinney team?
But we were guaranteed having one team, market team, go through with the head-to-head matchup. But, it was a fun game.
Yeah.
I said last week, Horn is a dangerous team in that if they're clicking, if they're playing well, they can beat anybody out there. They rolled over Temple in their first round game. And then this game against McKinney was fun. You mentioned, that McKinney team in a couple of years. I mean, their core rotation, they have 2 freshmen and 2 sophomores. And Devin Vincent, that sophomore, went nuts in the second half. He had 24 points in the game all after halftime. And this was a back-and-forth game. Horn kind of kept them at arm's length. They had the lead for pretty much the entire game. And then McKinney made a late charge. In fact, Devin Vincent had a 4-point play where he shoots a corner 3. I say corner 3. It's off the backboard, off the rim, goes in.
Wow. And
he's fouled, and it puts him up 1. He makes a free throw to put him up 1 with 20.1 seconds left.
That's a horse shot right there.
Yeah. It was. You could just see the Horn people just like, seriously, we're going to lose on this. But Horn, to their credit, they were clutch at the free throw line. They were 5 of 6. They were really 6 of 6 in the final minute, and 2 of those were 1-1s. The first 2 to protect their lead, and then after they went down by 1 on the 4-point play, Bryson Smith, a sophomore, made the first free throw to tie it. Actually made the second one, but got a little bit anxious because he thought it might be short, and he stepped over the line. It was a lane violation. So it ended up going to overtime, but Horn comes right out in overtime. Devin Hancock hits a big 3-pointer. Isaiah Chandler follows with another big 3-pointer to go up 68-62, and then they were kind of able to weather the storm. It was kind of interesting. It was 70-67. McKinney had the ball, and do you foul there? There's 30 seconds left. If you're Horn, do you foul? And I talked to Andre Waddy, the Horn head coach, and he said, well, we didn't have any timeout, so we really couldn't discuss it. He said, I just trusted my team to do what they needed to do. They elected not to foul. McKinney actually got 2 looks, 3-pointers, in those last 30 seconds, but Horn contested both of them, did a good job. I mean, like I said, Horn defense was solid all along. McKinney was just making some tough shots during that second half. But, I mentioned McKinney's going to be strong. that they got that core of freshmen and sophomores. They're going to be good in a couple of years. But we're talking about this year. And so Horn was the better team.
Yeah.
This is, I mentioned Saxe making history. This is Horn's second time ever making it to the regional quarterfinals, joining that 2009 team. Mm-hmm. So, they could beat, and we talked about it earlier. They played, I think now 10 state-ranked teams. They played a ton in December, and it went 4-4 against 8 state-ranked teams. So they've proven they can compete at that level. Well, they're going to need to on Tuesday because now they got number 3, Colleen Ellison, who rolled over Rockball in the first round and then took care of Saxe and ended their run in the area finals 74-51. So it's going to be a tough challenge. But again, Horn has that kind of talent. Zakir Sawyer is a D1 kid. Devin Hancock. I mentioned Isaiah Chandler. Preston Amond, who got hurt late in that game. But, he had 13 points and 12 rebounds. And he's kind of there. He can do a little bit of everything for them in terms of passing the ball, in terms of rebounding, 6'7" kids. So they've got the pieces. It's just going to take their A-plus effort on Tuesday against a very good Ellison team.
Over in Class 5A, Brian, we can talk a little bit of Frisco ISD. About as good a first round as you could have scripted. As I know Kendrick's not in the room right now, but I know with the
pretty
back
much what I projected against
with the back and
10-5A.
forth that you two have over 9-5A versus 10-5A.
It's not even a competition.
He's not even here to defend himself. Frisco ISD got the sweep over 10-5A. The second time in the basketball postseason that the 4 seed from the Frisco district has knocked off the district champion from District 10-5A. Frisco was able to overtake Princeton. And then you had, let's see, where else did you have? You had Wakeland advanced.
They beat Wiley East. Centennial beat Lovejoy.
They beat McKinney North.
They beat McKinney North. Independence beat Lovejoy.
Yeah.
First time ever that 4 Frisco ISD boys teams advanced to the second round. The second.
Stop right there.
Yeah, moving on to 4, right?
So it's a Salina and Cars.
It was,
the second round wasn't as generous to Frisco ISD. And
District 11-5A showing out a little bit.
We thought maybe, Newman Smith is so good because 11-5A may be a little weaker. But no, man, Highland Park, they edged Frisco by 2. Woodrow Wilson, they beat the district champion of Wakeland by double digits. And so they're the 3 seed. Yeah. And they're headed to the third round out of 11-5A. But Newman Smith, man, I saw them play Friday night at Richardson against Centennial. And holy cow, Centennial was hanging with them for the first 2.5 quarters. And I even talked to Glenn Gunn, our world-famous photographer, at halftime. And, we were talking about how, Centennial, we didn't think that maybe they could, give them this good of a game, just given how good Newman Smith is. And we both predicted, the second half would be a different story, especially fourth quarter when, that's why they play 2 halves. That's why they play the fourth quarter, when these teams that have that athleticism like Newman Smith, that size and skill, they wear teams down, and that's exactly what they did. Outscored them 20-12 in that fourth quarter. My guy, Tebow, I think his last name is Tagnon, or I don't know if G's silent or what have you. He comes off the bench, point guard. He hit 5 threes in this game. He was just in the passing lanes, just getting layups, finished with a game-high 23 points off the bench. Mm-hmm. He hit 1 3 from the corner late that kind of really put it back to about 20. The final score was 71-54. It was close the first half. Second half, like I said, they pulled away, and then when they really started pulling away, he hit a corner 3. And when he hit it, he was already kind of turning around like Steph Curry does when he knows his shots are going in. And went in, he turned around right in front of the Newman Smith side. I was sitting on the Newman Smith side because I like sitting on the front row opposite of the scores table, so I just happened to be the Newman Smith side. Sorry, Frisco Centennial. And he turns around, and he's just like, let's go, and the whole Newman Smith side is just going nuts. You could tell the whole school was there for that game. It's because Newman Smith, they're not traditionally good in a lot of sports, especially football and stuff like that. So to see them as dominant as they are, 29-0 now, yes, undefeated, they take on Kimball.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that one. Now, things are about to ramp up. But first off, fair play to Newman Smith, because I believe, at least dating back to the early 90s, this is just the third time ever that Newman Smith has been in the regional quarterfinal round of the postseason. And over that same span, never been to the regional tournaments. They got a chance for a little bit of history on Tuesday.
This is big for head coach Percy Johnson. Yeah, he was an awesome interview, by the way. That was my first time meeting him. I've heard great things about him. Yeah, he's awesome. But, they take on Kimball. They're ranked number 8 right now, and they just mollywopped Independence in that first round. They had a dude drop 36. in that game. So that's going to be fun. You're going to be at that game,
I
right?
am, yes. As far as the dude that dropped 36, that would be Arterio Morris, who is, he's, we talked about Keontae George being the best sophomore in Texas. Arterio Morris is ranked number 3 by 247 Sports.
Should be a name I should keep an eye on. There, I saw a highlight video. Obviously, I wasn't at that game against Independence, but I saw a few highlights on Twitter. I believe he's number 3, and he was just shake and bake, pull up, shake and bake, drive to the lane, shake and bake, step back, and no one could guard him from Independence.
He scores 36 against Independence. He's routinely been in that 20-plus points per game plateau all season long. He's got a Kansas offer, so that's the kind of prospect that he's being thought of as. And, it's not even just him, but you look around their roster, and they've got 6 guys that are at least 6'4". They've got some size that's working in their favor as well. And that's a program with a lot of pedigree, too. They used to be an absolute force at the 4A, 3A level once upon a time. That is up. What's up next for Newman Smith, who's 29-0, looking to keep this undefeated train rolling. But we're about to step into the deep end because, we're now at the juncture. This is hands down, I think, their biggest test of the season. And if you get past there, then again, you've made your history. You've got to the regional tournament, and you'll see if you can, try to maybe see if somebody can sneak up on Lancaster and whatnot. But either way, it's about to get real for Newman Smith starting on Tuesday. That game is at Neiman Forest, I believe, Tuesday, 7:30. Number 6 versus number 8 in the state. So I'm looking forward to it. I've not seen Newman Smith in person yet this season, and just based on your review, I'm anxious to see, especially going up against such a high level prospect like Arterio Morris.
Yeah, they passed the eye test even just walking out on the court. Mm-hmm. And the layup drills and the dunk, throwing down dunks and just getting ready for tip-off. They definitely passed the eye test. It's crazy that their best player, Jaron Cook, he's their only guy that's signed to go play college next year. He had 4 points against Centennial. That's it. And the rest of the team just
speaks to just the depth, and just the volume of options. And that is one of the calling cards of this team is that, with Jaron Cook, that he can get you 20 to 25 a night, but the fact that they have a guy like Tebow that can step up and called upon, that's very reassuring heading into such a big game. Let's talk about what I had cooking on Saturday, because I got to go out to West to see the end of the TAPS State Boys Basketball Tournament to cover Frisco Legacy Christian and John Paul II, both of whom return home with state championships in 2 very, very exciting games. Let's talk about John Paul. This is a team that we've talked about a bit on the podcast, and one of a team that is in the midst, or I guess it's now just polished off, I should say, one of the all-time great seasons in TAPS basketball. They finished the season 40-1 overall, and they finished on a 33-game winning streak. It did not come easy, though, in the postseason. They got a little bit of resistance. Bishop Lynch, a team that they were playing for the 3rd time. They met them in the state quarterfinals, and they got a little bit of pushback from the Friars. They ended up winning that game by, I believe, just 4 points. And then Midland Christian, another highly ranked private school team, they gave them a good game in the semis. And then they were going up against the defending state champion, Antonio Apaches. And this was a game that it looked like for a while that John Paul was, even though, Antonian's defense did a really good job kind of limiting the transition opportunities that John Paul's kind of feasted on this season, this was still a game that was about, 8 to 12 points for most of the way. And you never really felt like John Paul was ever in trouble. They did Jalen Tyson, their leading scorer, just came out guns blazing, just pull up threes that he was making over good contests and whatnot. And they looked really, really sharp out the gate. But then in the 4th quarter, here comes Antonian. They make this big old charge, and they're able to close this game down to a 1-point game after this wild and one finish by who was their leading scorer, Brian Armstrong. I believe I remember him from their football team as well. But this was, first off, the gym at West High School was rocking. Both teams had just outstanding turnouts. Their student sections were going crazy. There was both games had a lot of energy to them, but Antonian's just going wild as all of a sudden here they are, and I'm sitting there thinking, is this really how it's going to end? Is John Paul about to let this one get away? Because Antonian, that's you hear the kind of the cliche, the heart of a champion and whatnot, but just the resilience of that team to keep pushing, and they got a really, really crafty backcourt and whatnot, and they did such a good job of really kind of grinding it out. It's a very physical ball game, and the refs kind of called it as such. This John Paul was they were in the double bonus by the start of the 4th quarter. I'm sure you would have loved to watch a game like that, Devin. But John Paul, despite that late charge by Antonian, Nate Dominic, he's kind of been their glue guy all season. He comes through with some pretty massive sequences. John Paul gets back up by 3, and then the Antonian point guard, Gavino Ramos, he isolates on Nate Dominic, tries to pull up 3 that Dominic contests perfectly. He causes a miss there, and then the next trip down, he draws a charge on Ramos as well to get the ball back to John Paul. And then, John Paul had a bit of an adventure from the free throw line in the fourth quarter, and a little bit of a tough time putting that one away. But Dominic went to the line with 12 seconds left and knocked down 2 free throws to give him a 51-46 lead, which they were able to nurse to the finish line. They ended up winning that game, I believe, 51-48. Heck of a year. First ever state championship for John Paul, and what was, again, like I said, one of the all-time great Taps basketball seasons, to go 40-1 with the margin of victory. The teams that they played in the preseason, the public schools that they beat. We talked about what a great team Flower Mound was a ways back. They beat them. The thing about teams like that is when things come so natural to you, things come so easy. Like, how do you respond though when you do get cracked in the mouth a bit and meet a little bit of adversity? And head coach Dan Lee was sure to bring up afterwards that they played 10 games all season that were decided by 5 points or less, and they were 9-1 in those games. The only loss coming to Frisco Memorial in the non-district schedule. So that team did have that sort of that crunch time medal to at least tough out those close games, and they needed it in the playoffs because they met plenty of resistance from the rest of Taps. And then you look at Frisco Legacy Christian, which entered their game against Westbury Christian as the defending state champions over in 5A. They were not the top-ranked team in the matchup, though, because that belonged to Westbury Christian, one of the more credentialed 5A programs in the entire state. I believe Westbury was going for their 22nd state championship. This was a really, really good game. Just pound for pound, one of the more exciting basketball games I've covered in some time. Just the tactical ins and outs of how, a team that had so much athleticism in Westbury and how, Legacy could figure out ways to just kind of exploit that and just kind of get them off balance. Basically, in the first half, what they did is they basically ran like just a 5-out. They just spread out, Westbury, and then just kept moving the ball around, trying to find attacking lanes. And then they would get into the paint and then kick it over to, their leading scorer, Jonathan Alexandre, who was just camped out in the corner as a spot-up shooter, and he was lethal in that role. He, despite having a bit of a rough shooting night in their game the night before, he knocked down 5 threes in the first half, had 17 points. He finished the game with 25, and then, the fourth quarter was a bit of a free throw fest as well. This was
Devin's favorite.
But how's this though? Have you guys ever heard of a stat like this? Frisco Legacy Christian finished the game on a pretty rough night from the line. 13 of 27, all 27 free throws came in the fourth quarter.
Wow!
They had not attempted it. They had not attempted a single free throw.
Brutal. How long did that quarter last?
Forever.
You said it was a great game.
But it really was. I never felt like in the moment like it was really bogged down by that, despite that high volume of free throws, which I know sounds insane as I'm saying it out loud. But no, this was a really, really entertaining. Just because of, again, like talk about the tactical ins and outs. Like Legacy Christian had such a tough time scoring the ball inside because Javier Francis, the Westbury big man, is just an absolute nightmare protecting the rim. I want to say he had 5 or 6 blocks, and I want to say he only had 1 or 2 fouls to start the fourth quarter, and then they were able to kind of get him out of the paint and make him have to kind of move around a little bit and make him have to make blocks that aren't normally natural for a rim protector. And he ends up fouling out of the game with about 3.5 minutes left.
So that explains why Alexandre was sitting in the corner for a lot of the game, because Westbury had this shot block.
Yeah, to try to draw the big man out and whatnot. Okay. Yeah. They realized. That was a game changer for Legacy, just because it opened up so much as far as just the kinds of offense that you can generate. You don't have to worry about the 6'6" fortress out there just to reject your shot. And they're able to get some clutch plays late from Garrett Pelham, their star point guard. Their best clutch asset came because they had, again, like I said, 13 of 27, so a bit of a rocky game from the free throw line. They actually did, though, late in the game, rebound 2 of those misses to help run some more clock and help kind of extend the game and keep the ball away from Westbury. Ryan Klink, Jonathan Mosley were the 2 players that came down with those clutch rebounds. And, they go back-to-back. Just an impressive run for a Frisco Legacy Christian, a team that, if you're just going to stack up just the history of one program versus the other, it's a mismatch. But, man, Legacy Christian has really, really come on, and they're the team to beat right now at TAPS 5A. So very, very cool stuff on Saturday out in the West. Let's see. Was there anything else you guys wanted to add? we kick it over to talk some state girls basketball tournament?
I was going to say, we touched on Horn and Saxy. I didn't have a lot more to talk about, unfortunately, for my
because we can just go on to the second half. I wanted to at least open the floor up to you guys.
I mean, did you have any Salina?
Well, Salina plays Carter, Tuesday at Louisville, 7:30. I mean, Salina's already in the midst of
what the confidence you're showing.
Carter's the number 2 ranked team in the state. They're a traditional powerhouse, obviously. Salina's been rolling. I mean, I've mentioned 3rd straight district title. They're in the midst of one of their best seasons ever on the basketball court. If they beat Carter, though, that's got to be the biggest win ever in their history. If they beat Carter, I mean, granted, Salina history goes way back, but I'll be there. And I was also there last year in the first round against Lincoln when it was the 1 versus 4 that I've talked about many times. And that game was not pretty. Salina is better than they were a year ago from that team, but also Carter might be a better team than that Lincoln team they faced last year. It'll be interesting. It'll be Carson Stastny's very last game.
How many does he need to score?
They're going to need a big night from him. They're going to he's going to need at least 25.
100.
And you're going to need.
He could go wilt.
Holds up the sign 101, and they still lose. They're going to need a bunch of guys step up, and not just Carson. But they're going to need the perfect game, and we'll see. Hopefully, it's somewhat close.
Maybe a performance akin to what Argyle's Riley McKinney had in their regional tournament.
What'd she have? 33 points.
Maybe it was the first 26 points in the regional final.
Carson Stastny.
But didn't she score 32 in the semi too?
33, I think.
And I think they only scored like 42 as a team type stuff.
Yeah, they need something like that.
Yeah. Speaking of which, that is one of the teams that we can get to on the other half of the podcast as we preview the state girls basketball tournament. We got Argyle, Frisco Liberty, and McKinney. McKinney going to state, and yes, we will get to that and more in a quick word on the other side of this quick break. And we are back. We have Bryan Murphy and Kendrick Johnson to tag along as we talk about the high school girls basketball state tournament. The Final Four has been set, and we know who's going to be in action later on this week down at the Alamo Dome out in San Antonio. At least from our coverage area, we got 3 teams. We have Argyle. What a surprise. Argyle's back. 7th consecutive year for Argyle. They're going for their 6th consecutive state championship. That dream is very much still alive. Let's see. They will be obviously in action over in 4A. And we got Frisco Liberty. Brian returning to the state tournament over in 5A, and then let's talk about this one first, man, because I wonder what the you're a gambling man, Kendrick. I wonder what kind of odds you could have got at the start of the postseason that we would have McKinney representing Region 2 6A making their first state tournament appearance in over 2 decades.
Probably like 1 in 300, but guess what? It's that one.
They're there. Yep.
Props to them.
They're there. No one can take that away from them. So yes, Kendrick, you were you were there. You got to see the Region 2 6A tournament out in Dallas over the weekend, where whether it's just the age-old adage of it's tough to beat a team 3 times in a row or whatnot, but despite Plano Senior getting the best of McKinney 2 times during the regular season, the Lionettes won the one that counted, and that was with the trip to state on the line. It sounds like it was a pretty tough game to watch, all things considered.
It's like a yes and no. Both teams are very good, very well coached, both teams. Pops out to Coach Deb Harris. She coached her tail off. That lady mixed up zones. She had half-court traps. She hauled off and they went full-court press, and they're not a pressing team. They did everything they had to do to find a way to disrupt Plano's rhythm. And the key to me that people are not really talking about is when Maggie Robbins, Plano's key senior guard, went out with 3:21 in the first quarter with 3 fouls. Plano had nobody initiate the offense, and that kind of hurt them. And then they went 10 for 55 and 0 for 14 behind the 3-point line. That'll get you beat every day of the week. You can't win a YMCA game shoot like that.
That number floors me because it's I think back to when we were previewing the playoffs, and that's if you look at but Plano's last loss to Allen, it was very similar in the sense that if there's one bugaboo about this team, as great as they can be on defense and as smart a team as that is, they will have those moments where they're not a dynamic shooting team. They're capable, certainly. I mean, you saw that against their regional semifinal against Vista Ridge. They were able to let it fly from deep, and they were able to knock down a few and whatnot. But you'll kind of live with those shots though if you're an opponent versus them getting inside and really showcasing their length and their size. So that's where I kind of look back and wonder, like, not to do the kind of the sports guy talking head thing of like, so did was this more McKinney's defense, or did Plano just have one of those games? Because I mean, no matter how good you are, I mean, 10 for 55 in a regional final is pretty stunning.
It was McKinney's defense and the fact that they're familiar with each other. Mm-hmm. I almost put money on if either team faced somebody in that region besides each other, they win by double figures. Yeah. Both teams are playing at a high level, but that being familiar, and the refs, they usually don't do a good job, in my opinion. Did a good job. They let it get physical. Okay. It was a big wrestling match.
Because you saw that in the regional semifinals. Once again, for the second straight year, it was District 9 6A against District 13 6A. You had Vista Ridge and Hendrickson back in their regional tournament for the second straight year. You had two completely different teams, though, from 9 6A.
Same results.
Whereas last year, it was Allen and Prosper last year. Those two teams wound up playing each other in the regional finals, and then this year, Plano and McKinney. So really, just kind of showcasing the depth of that district. That you wonder, like, what McKinney did, because like McKinney on paper, you look at they're a third place team and whatnot, and that's their seed entering the postseason. But McKinney was obviously they battled some injuries throughout the season, but when healthy, like they beat Plano East, they beat Allen, they showed they can at least hang with Plano. It's not like they just got run off the floor by them in the regular season. You wonder if maybe the the narrative on McKinney is a little bit different if they are in any other district. But
a key thing besides Coach Harris making, like, whatever she's doing, she need to keep doing. Like, wherever she punching, it's turning into goal. But they find a different hero every night. Like, starting the Tyler League game, Taylor Jackson hit 9 3-pointers, school record. I've seen the girl play for the last 2 years. I think I've seen her like 4 or 5 threes. Hit 9 in the game. Hey. And then against Harker Heights, star guard Aaron Fry, she scored or assisted the last 16 points of the game, closed them out. Against Hendrickson, Trinity White, she has been struggling with her shot. Said not today, came out and hit 4 threes as you saw, and set the tone for them. So it's a different hero every game, and that's how they're getting it done. And these girls are playing confidence down to 15. So they're playing the number 1 team in the state. They got a tough road with Houston Cypress Creek. I did a little research. They've won 14 games by over 40 points. But these girls from McKinney don't care. They're not scared of nobody. So right there, the fear factor is half the battle. We'll see what happens on Friday, but they won't be scared. They won't be back down, and they feel they're supposed to be there because they did earn their way, and they beat teams that I would say since the Tyler League game, nobody's been picking them. Wouldn't you say? Tyler League game was a pick 'em. People didn't think they could be Harker Heights. People definitely didn't think they were going to be Hendrickson or Plano.
I think after the Harker Heights game, though, it was finally time to start taking them a little bit seriously because you saw like they were able to get by Lakeview Centennial in the first round. Not an overwhelming win. Yeah, not an overwhelming win. But when you knock off, I got to see that Harker Heights team against Plano East. Their talent. That's a very, very talented team.
They got some shooters,
some guards. Yeah, their guards can get buckets. When you knocked off that team, though, I think that you started to take them a bit more seriously. And then when you look at kind of, again, how this district fared, under these similar circumstances last season against 13-6A, the fact that you had 9-6A once again kind of assert itself, didn't really shock me in that sense. And then, when you get in the regional final, would common knowledge, suggest that Plano probably wins that game? Probably just because of, again, the talent edge and just, they beat them twice in the regular season and whatnot. Whereas, both teams are strong on defense, but Plano probably maybe gets a slight edge in that capacity. But it took a game from Plano that was probably a bit of an aberration in some respects. You shoot 10 of 55. That just isn't common for any team. But that's the fact is, though, that's just what it took, though. And McKinney, fair play to them for playing the defense and, forcing Plano into the types of shots that they're, that's certainly not their bread and butter. And, you saw what it means in the end. Is certainly McKinney's not, it's not a fluke that McKinney's here. After that third round, though, I think it was time to start taking it seriously. As far as, though, what it means now later on this week, it is crazy because you look at the field in this state tournament, and
it's insane. They got the number 1 team in the state. They got the last 3 state champions because Duncanville went back to back.
No, Plano won 2 years ago.
So Duncanville.
Bottom line is, though, it's Duncanville, though. Duncanville's won.
And Justin's defending state champions, and nobody talking about.
Yeah. So on the one hand, yes, you have the team that McKinney has up next, Houston Cypress Creek, who, if you've not had a chance to look at their record, it's pretty good, pretty solid record, undefeated at this point in the season. That was a team that is making their second trip state in 3 years. They were there 2 years ago. that was the team that Plano, ironically enough, beat in the semifinals on the way to their first ever state championship. You have Converse Judson, who is the defending state champion.
Now they're talking about that.
Now they lost a little bit of the firepower from last season's title team. They only come into the postseason, I think, ranked like number 19 or something. They were just barely inside the top 20, but they do have that pedigree on their side, having been to state the last several years. And of course, then you have Duncanville, who's kind of the standard bearer for Texas high school girls basketball. They're back. They're ranked number 1 in the state by the TABC.
So they're over Cypress Creek.
Yeah, Cypress Creek's number 3, I believe. And Duncanville just survived just one of the most brutal regional schedules that you can play. So who knows? McKinney's going to be the underdog on paper for sure, but it's a position that they're obviously not. And
they got the guard named Deidre Kelly.
Yeah, Deidre Kelly.
They played earlier this year. I just looked at the box score. Duncanville beat McKinney by 42, and Deidre Kelly had 46.
So
this girl's going to be playing in the WNBA, though. She's special.
But the reality stands, though, this McKinney team is certainly playing with a bit more confidence. And
I guarantee that does not happen.
A better sense of identity than they were earlier in the season.
Like I said, confidence and fear factor. They're not scared, and their confidence is high. So you can do things that people don't think you can do. I think, like I said, I'm expecting a more competitive game that people want to lead on. They didn't shot people to get this far, and games like this, I learned this from the Boyd situation last year. When teams are not supposed to, quote unquote, be there, when they're hanging with that team that's supposed to win, that pressure came on. Like Cy Creek last year, I know we're talking about baseball, one of the best fielding teams I've ever seen, made 2 errors in 1 inning because they knew that pressure had melted. So if McKinney can keep it close, who's to say Cypress Creek undefeated 4-0 all that pressure don't come to them.
One day beforehand, though, is when the start of the 5A state semifinals begins. And Brian, you got a familiar face back there over in your neck of the woods, man.
What's up?
Despite the puzzle pieces are a little bit different this year. They lost a lot of talent from that team last season.
They graduated 11 players from the team that went to state last year.
And they're back.
They're back.
Didn't have a ton of fanfare entering the postseason, would you say? Or
no.
But nevertheless, though, yes, they survived. They've beaten quality teams. So it's not like the bracket just happened to break their way or anything. But it certainly didn't come without a bit of a heart wrencher, I should say, on Saturday in that regional final against Midlothian, and just
triple overtime. They were down pretty much that entire game, and which is interesting to see because usually Liberty, they grind out games. They're very defensive. They rely on their defense. Jazzy Owens-Barnett does a lot of the bulk of their scoring on offense, and then they suffocate you defensively. There's a lot of 40 to 28, 35 to 30 type games. Like you're not going to see Liberty get up in the 60s and 70s on a regular basis, and we've seen that in the playoffs so far. But they were off to a slow start Saturday afternoon against Midlothian, a team that I thought was not in the same stratosphere as Liberty, in my opinion. Liberty had just beaten Red Oak, the number 3 team in the state, the day before. Jazzy Owens-Barnett scores 26 of Liberty's 42 points to beat Red Oak, and then they just came out real sluggish. It was that classic, day after, the afternoon after a big night game against the number 3 team, and playing Midlothian, start up slow. They scored 2 points in the first quarter. And like I said, they're down from they take the lead early in the second quarter. Then from that point on, they're down by 4 to 8 points the entire way, and then they just kept inching away, grinding it out, and they get a 4-0 run. A 4-0 run in this game was massive because just given the circumstances.
There was a sound like playing on McKinney.
It really was. The reason why the score was so high at 48-43 is because it went to 3 overtimes. The end of regulation was 30-30. If that tells you how the game was going, but they Jazzy Owens-Barnett closes it out. It was a weird grinded out game, but they've been in that situation before. It's their 3rd time now heading to state since 2016. They've been to the playoffs. They made deep playoff runs every season in the last decade. They graduated their entire starting roster. Even after they beat South Oak Cliff in round 2, the Liberty coach said, or Ross Reedy said, going in, I thought maybe we're the 5th best team, in the district. I don't know how much of that he means, but
maybe downplaying it a bit, or
a little bit. But man, the job that he's done, and the job that the role players on this team are have bought in completely. Lily, her last name is wild, Zinkowitz something, but she's one of the best shooters I've seen. She hit 3 threes against Midlothian. Coach Reedy told me after they beat South Oak Cliff, anytime she's shooting the ball, he thinks it's going in. He says sometimes in practice she does not miss. Maya Jane has been big. Even Kyla Crawford, the volleyball star, she's 6'2", comes in there. She had a couple big buckets against Midlothian. Not really a basketball player. Volleyball's her main sport. She comes in off the bench. But Jazzy Owens-Barnett has been running this team. She's averaging over 20 points per game in this playoff run, well above her average from the regular season. She's really elevated her play. Like I said, 26 against Red Oak. They entered the playoffs as the number 25 ranked team in the state. Yeah. That's disrespect right there.
She's not even ranked.
That's disrespect.
Knocking them off.
Yeah, and so now they play College Station on Thursday. College Station, they're ranked 23rd.
It is weird because I was just looking over the brackets to see it's relative to the rankings. And granted, it's just rankings, so again, ultimately, who cares? You made it to state. But it is kind of ironic because the UIL basically just seeds them based on their records. So you have an instance where you have number 23 versus number 25 in one semifinal, and then in the other, you have number 5 versus number 6. Yeah, in a Veterans Memorial in Mansfield Timberview.
Yeah, some of these rankings are right. Amarillo number 1. I wouldn't disagree with that.
Which of note, Amarillo got knocked out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but that through the regular season, they're the number 1 team. But some of these other rankings, like no offense, Kendrick, McKinney North, they're ranked number 22. Do I think McKinney North is a better team than Frisco Liberty? Not a chance.
Yeah, but I them next year.
Next year, maybe. But I saw them play against Lone Star in the first round, and Lone Star, beat them pretty good.
The eye rolls that were getting off camera at that remark.
It's just some of these rankings, but I don't want to get too much into those rankings. But the fact that they're ranked 25th, and I get it. You look at that roster, that starting lineup. There's 2 players that are on the roster right now for Frisco Liberty that actually played in that state championship game from a year ago. Or that were on the roster, I should say. One of them didn't even see the floor, and that was Maya Jane. Maya Jane hit a huge 3 in, I believe it was double overtime to win the game. She's one of their top players, one of their top shooters, one of their go-to scorers now, and she didn't even see the floor in the state championship game last year. And obviously, Jazzy Owens-Barnett was their 6th man, and now she's a potential, state tournament MVP candidate if they can win the state title. It's just been a wonderful job that Coach Reedy and that coaching staff. And his assistant coaches are all new too. That's another thing, man. It's wild that they've reloaded so fast. It's just that culture and tradition at Frisco Liberty, that's unlike any other, for at least in the Frisco ISD district.
For sure. We talk about rankings kind of being all over the place. You look at what's happening over in 4A and how the landscape looks there. So you have Argyle, who's no stranger to this juncture of the postseason. Obviously, Argyle in pursuit of a 6th consecutive state championship. They entered the postseason ranked number 5, so a little bit of a different standing than usual. Doesn't matter. They knocked off number 1 ranked Canyon in the regional semifinals, and they were they're back. And look at them, and you look at kind of who else they're up against. So the rest of the field, they're the only team in the top 10 in Class 4A that made the state tournament. Wow. You have number 11 Fairfield. Then you have number 16 Dallas Lincoln. That's who Argyle played last year in the state semifinals in a game that went right down to the wire. It was a very, very close contest. And then you have number 19 Fredericksburg. So the field is all over the place. So again, whether that means it's just a coronation for Argyle, or again, if these rankings might be a tad deceiving, we shall see. But basically, all you need to know about Argyle's current postseason run is that Riley McKinney is playing out of her mind. Just some of the numbers that she is putting up are just absurd. I mean, you look at, she had 33 points against the number 1 ranked team in the state, and then you look at their regional final against Bridgeport. She scored their first 26 points of the ball game. Whoa.
Let's call balling.
It was Riley McKinney 26, Bridgeport whatever, and but this is this
going into the season. Wasn't she their second best player because didn't their best player tear her ACL?
Sydney Standifer tore her ACL and whatnot during the regular season for the second straight year. This has happened to her, which is awful stuff. You never like to see that for anybody. One season, let alone 2 straight. McKinney. When Standifer went down last year is kind of when McKinney kind of elevated herself into being one of the better players in the entire state. And she's playing about as well as she ever has leading into this point, and that's just disastrous news for every other team in 4A left standing right now. Of note, Argyle, as you mentioned, they're going for their 6th consecutive state championship, so that means you've won several postseason games in a row along the way. What would you guys hedge to guess the winning streak in the postseason for Argyle is at right now?
So that's 6. They're going for their 6th straight. That's what's.
I say 46.
My math is not good. I would say 38.
Brian's closer. It's 40.
Okay.
40 straight wins, though, in the playoffs. And like I said, the last time this team lost a playoff game was at the state tournament and whatnot back in, I believe, 2013. So, yeah, just an absolute just halcyon age for Argyle girls basketball right now.
And the team that came closest to beating them last year is out. Mark Jefferson.
Yeah, we'll see again what it all means. They get rolling on Friday. That game's actually going to be right before the McKinney game. McKinney plays at 7 o'clock. Argyle plays earlier in the afternoon at 3. But yes, Argyle with a chance to just continue making history at the state girls basketball tournament. Kendrick is going to be down there. He will be on site covering that stuff for us later on in the week out at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. He'll have all sorts of updates on social media. Where can they follow you at, Kendrick?
At Kendrick Johnson on Twitter and Instagram, in case you're versatile like that.
Basically, if you just spell out the name Kendrick Johnson, except just leave the N off at the end. Kendrick Johnson.
So there's already a Kendrick Johnson.
Yeah.
Same with mine. I had to add an underscore to mine. There's already a fake Bryan Murphy up there, so I feel your pain.
So your name's more common than mine stuff.
Is it? With the Y?
Yeah, there's a ton of Bryan Murphy.
Okay.
He's like, I got investigation.
Yeah.
So yes, follow along Kendrick. He will be out there at the state girls basketball tournament later this week, having y'all covered with Argyle, Frisco Liberty, and McKinney. Got 3 teams for the second straight year. Star Local Media has 3 teams in the state girls basketball tournament. Not sure who we're going to have anybody on the boys' side, but at least we're making up for it right now with a pretty festive turnout at the girls' tournament. So yes, that is a look at what is in store later this week out in San Antonio, and that will do it for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. Until next time, folks, enjoy your week, and we'll talk to y'all later.